Hello and welcome everyone to the Rainbow Coaching Collective podcast. We are a collective of LGBTQIA plus transformative coaches who are set on empowering members of the community and its allies, one conversation at a time. This week is our second episode, and we will be exploring the theme of coming out and sharing our stories. Okay, so before we get cracking, I'll just, for those new to the podcast, introduce ourselves. So my name's Holly. Hi. And we also have Max and Rachel.
Hi everyone, nice to be
Hey,
here.
everyone.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so this is a big topic, and I'm sure we have a lot to say. Um, where would we like to start right now?
The coming out, yeah, a, a big one. I think there's so many ways into this, isn't there? But we were just talking about sort of our own journeys before we came on this call. We're sort of talking about the idea of there being a coming out of sort of the pain point, but then coming out being that ongoing process that you go through for the rest of your life. Um, and that can sometimes be uncomfortable, but it's that sort of pain point that we have to come out of, that space where we go through self-acceptance and come out to our family, our friends for the first time. That can be quite daunting, um and that being the thing that sort of binds us as a community, that being the thing
Mm,
that sort of unifies us. And that's sort of a beautiful thing, that we all share that story, but that story for all of us is so different, isn't it?
mm,
um
Yeah.
so one way in, I guess, would be for us to start by sharing our stories,
Yeah.
lovely.
if you both feel comfortable doing so.
I know, I totally agree with you, Max. I think it's a kind of ongoing thing. But actually you're right in that sense of bonding because we all have a coming out story.
Mm.
And I think it's something that I didn't really like. I understood my own coming out story, but I didn't realize, I think when I first came out, that I would still be doing it all these
Mm.
years later.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
thought it was just come out once and then that's it, job done. But no, it's kind of, and actually, if I'm honest, I've kind of come out, come back in, come out.
Yeah.
But kind of, yeah. And I guess different places I might be more out than others. So I think
Mm,
it's that question of, for me, how comfortable am I? How am I wanting to show up in these areas of my life? And
Mm.
as I've got older, I've become more, no, this is me. And actually, for me to come out isn't me with the problem.
Mm.
um,
mm.
but it still leaves me sometimes holding my breath when I come out to go, okay, I'm going to say a sentence now, which may change the dynamics between whoever I'm talking with.
Yeah.
Because there is that sense that
Mm,
once you've said that sentence, that's it, you don't go back.
Yeah. And what that does to us, to wait for that external validation, and with every conversation that we have. And I think there's a level of maturity with that. And I don't mean maturity in any other sense of the word other than experience. So there's the experience with that. But even then, there's spaces where that can just be tough, right? Um, I find it in the barbers that really, really challenging. Just, what have you been up to the weekend? Straight away, oh, I was with my husband, and just in a group, in a very sort of mask environment, that can be quite intimidating, but it's also true to my experience. That could be quite scary. But yeah, that's something that we all share, isn't it? Even after that painful coming out experience in our youth, or for some of us later in life, there's still that ongoing coming out process, that still ongoing sort of scanning the environment to see whether we'd be accepted. And it's quite sad when we think about it.
mm.
Um, that there's that self-worth piece coming in, but also we have a whole community that knows what that feels like, and that also brings
Yes.
me a lot of hope. And I feel connected, to
Mm.
know that I'm not alone in that experience.
That's really lovely. Do you know what I want to ask? I'm just going to go straight in and ask it. When did you know? And what was the time frame between when you knew and when you actually came out?
Mm.
Do you know what? It wasn't until a month ago when I did a course where they were talking about you have to come out to yourself before you then can come out. So the process of coming out starts way before you come out to another person. I don't really know when that process particularly started, but I think I remember being more kind of nervous of how do I do this? Because, there was no, back in my day, there was no media to say, hey, this is what you do and this is what you
Mm.
can expect. Or even this is what it means. Because my experience is, I grew up in a heterosexual family. I went to school where it was, heterosexual teachers. You look around, it was very, for me, a very heterosexual world.
Mm.
And I think it probably wasn't until probably my late teens when I came across the Rocky Horror Show.
Yay.
And I just went to go and see it with a friend, and ended up loving it. And it was Charming Underclothes, and it was at Prince Charles Leicester Cinema in London, and they did it every Friday night at midnight. So basically, there was a group of people who performed in front of a cinema screen, the Rocky Horror, and it was such a lovely place where you could be you. You could
Mm.
just turn up. It didn't matter what your sexuality was. There were no questions asked. And, to come out as being gay, bisexual, anything at that point, it was accepted within that group. It was like
Mm.
um, a real sense of belonging and not having to fear by me saying I'm gay, what reaction am I going to get?
Mm.
So that for
Very
me was
nice not to have to worry. It's a
yeah,
relief, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, I hear all of that, Rach. That's the thing. There's so many similarities in our stories, but so different in terms of the facts and the context. Um, but yeah, it's always an interesting question to think back, isn't it? When did I knew? And I think as a 4 or 5 year old, I probably had an inkling. If I'm honest. If I could go back and be a 4 or 5 year old again, I think I probably had an inkling, which sounds, you know, to some people that might sound quite radical, but actually that was my experience. But there was a repression that came in, a real deep repression, and I think that came from a lot of internalized homophobia from some messaging that I had received, and um, yeah, some of the spaces that I'd been in, and um, but growing up without a father and having two brothers to sort of look up to older brothers, I thought I had to follow in their footsteps, which was this heteronormative life. So I felt I couldn't be anything other than what they were. I couldn't be anything other than um, what was expected of me. And so the repression was really, really deep. And I remember at like school, I had crushes, but I'd push them off and um, repress those. And um, yeah, that repression got deeper and deeper and deeper. But the inner me, the authentic self, was pushing and pushing and pushing to come out. It was like bursting to come out. And it was in my early 20s. I was in a relationship with a woman, and yeah, I mean, we loved each other in the sense that, well, we loved each other. But I knew that that just wasn't. There was something that was not right, and it's so interesting thinking back because it's so obvious now. But at the time, in my brain, that just could not be. That just was not an option to be anything other than heterosexual. Just was not an option. The internalized homophobia was so, so, so strong. Um, And so it was everything else but that. And I remember her turning around to me one day and she said, um, there's basically two things that this could be. One of them is that, you know, you don't love me, and the other one is that you're gay, which is it. And I was like, well, I'm definitely not gay. So let's work on the other one, but I don't think it's that either. And I just got lost in this spiral. But that moment made me think, now what if, what if? And I just started to, it opened up a part of my brain that I'd kept trapped for so long. And we closed things off. And I should say as well, like, um, I appreciate that in that journey, I you know, not purposely, but did cause probably, no, I know, some pain, through my own coming out and coming to terms with who I am, um, both to myself and to her, which I've apologized to her about, and we're friends now and everything's fine. Um, but yeah, it was a whole journey. And shortly after that, I started to look at media and I started to realize that I could be something other than this world I'd built around me. And that was a incredibly terrifying time because the awareness rapidly increased then, and then it all bubbled to the surface, and it was just like, that's it. I have to address this now. It's like a no-go. And yeah, I think it starts with that process of coming out to self, doesn't it? And that can look like I'm just questioning, but I know I'm not straight, to finding labels if that's appropriate. We're not just talking obviously about sexuality, gender identity as well, and everything else. But that whole process was a real challenge for me, and something I was just chatting to you guys before we came on this one. Um, the Trevor Project is great. It gets better. Campaign. It really gave me hope. And if there's anyone listening to this who's sort of questioning or in that space of repression and just coming out of that and starting to realize that they might be, part of the community, know that it does get better, and it gets a lot better. And it's actually quite a beautiful thing to be part of a community that is unified, um, by that story. But there's a real support there. So even if you fear that you won't be accepted by those close to you at the moment, I know that there's a community there that always will accept you. And I think that gave me hope that I could go away and speak to my family, my brothers, my close friends, and that world could drop away. That was very, very terrifying. But I just remember that message. It does get better. It does get better. And my world didn't fall apart. And in large part, I was one of the very fortunate ones where I was largely accepted, for who I was. But that's not everybody's story. But know that there is a community of people out there, no matter what, that have your back. I think, that's something important to say.
Mm, yeah, absolutely. And something that's really beautiful is that you'll continually find your tribe,
Mm,
in your different walks of life. Like I found my tribe in my 20s, and they are still very much family to me. Um, but, you know, moving into this new era of my life, where I'm sort of more career focused. Now I know that I want to coach on a full-time basis. I've connected with the two of you, which is,
mm,
been another really beautiful experience. So you continually, if you continually show up with your authentic self, you will authentically meet other people in those spaces. So we've come together in the
yeah.
coaching space, and we can share that experience and do the Rainbow Coaching Collective, which is something that we are all so passionate about and really
Mm,
believe in. So yeah, it is, even though we were talking before about coming out kind of in some way, shape, or form being a continual process, there may be some negative experiences that, you can never say that they go away completely, but they also open up beautiful, enriching experiences, that we can be testament to as
yeah.
well. Um, so yeah, it's the best of both, really.
Mm. Remind me
Yeah,
of a. Oh, sorry. Go on, Rich.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to say, I totally agree that when you turn up as your authentic self, you are going to attract authentic people back.
Mm.
I think in the beginning, I mean, for me personally, I didn't know anybody else. You know, when I was still going through my, am I gay? What's going on for me? There wasn't anybody else to kind of have those conversations with. And I remember when I first came out to my best friend at the time, this was kind of late teens, I guess, and that was it. She didn't want to know me after that. So that was
Mm.
my kind of okay, that it can come with drawbacks, but also I
Mm.
think I have made some lovely friends, met some lovely people
Mm.
who, I can say that sentence, I'm gay, and be loved and accepted for me. So I think
Mm.
you're right. There are positives, negatives along the way, and I don't think life is ever straightforward. But to know
Yeah.
actually through those difficult times, it's not always necessarily going to be difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Uh, that about sort of being in those spaces around other like-minded people where you can be your authentic self. And that's something I always used to crave. I always used to think I had to conform to this heteronormative world that we were living in. So I would try and force myself to like certain things, like certain sports or um, the conversations that I was having with certain people. And I was having to create a life, and it was all like acting all the time. That's how it felt. It was tiring. And for
Mhm.
the first time to not be wearing that mask, to take that mask off and just be free in a space where I could say what I really enjoyed doing, what I really enjoyed talking about, what I really enjoyed, connecting with people over, like with yourselves, was just so freeing and liberating. And it's not even coming out as gay. It's like there's different types of coming out. There's coming out as spiritual if you are spiritual. There's coming out in terms of obviously gender identity or even exploring your gender identity. There's so many different ways that we can come out and so many different explorations and journeys that we can go on as human beings. But sometimes the world that we live in wants to keep us trapped, and all that there's a lot of conditioning that can keep us trapped. So I think once you've started that journey of coming out, whether that's sexuality, gender identity, it sort of catapults you on a bigger journey. And in my experience of coming out, where else do I want to come out? Where else do I want to explore? What else do I want to experience? How else can I connect to my true self? And there's a quote that I like to say, and I get this out quite often, so these guys are pretty tired of it, but it's my favorite one, which is the privilege of a lifetime I think it's the privilege of a lifetime is becoming who you truly are by Carl Jung. Got that out at our last collective meeting tonight. And it's just such a beautiful quote because I love the idea that we're on a journey back to ourselves. And I feel like the coming out process is exactly that. We're coming back to who's that person that's screaming to come out, not just sexuality, not just gender identity, but also in every other way. What does that core authentic self need from you? And really leaning into that means that you can lead a fulfilling life.
Mm, that's beautiful. I love that quote, Max. You can say it as much as you like.
We'll end up doing a podcast on it.
Yeah, just on that one
Yeah.
point. How about you, Holly? How your sort of journey?
Yeah. So yeah, I had a little think before. I really resonated with a couple of things you said, Max. And what I don't want it is for this to sound too negative, but
Mm.
I wrote down the word terrifying.
Mm.
I was, from the moment that I realised I'd fallen in love with someone in my class, it was an all girls school, I was terrified. I was, the word is terrible. I was absolutely terrified that somebody would find out, that she would find out. I was terrified of admitting it even to myself. Um, and the the sort of analogy that I always give that kind of explains my state of mind was I used to keep a diary and I really wanted to keep a diary because that's what you did when you were growing up and you were and you were a girl and you kept a diary, and there wasn't so much to do back in the day when I was growing up. So we didn't have smartphones or anything like that. So we did things like run around woods and write diaries. But my diary was just boring. It was just a list of things that I did. Like I went to ballet, I did this, I went to Hannah's house and had this food. Um, but I think what I was doing in writing this diary was trying to express myself, but couldn't.
Mm.
And a few years back, I was moving house or sorting out boxes, and I was going through like the box of all my kind of treasures, my notebooks, my things like that. And I found this diary and I read through it and I thought, oh my God, this is so boring. But then I found this one passage that I think it sums up my whole life, because underneath I was just acting on the top, on the surface. I was doing this, I was doing that. And then I had this inner world that was terrified of being true. I didn't even know how to be true. Like I wouldn't have even known how that would have looked, going to an all girls school. Um, I was really looked really young for my age as well. So I was like 14, but I looked 12. I was a bit of a geek. I went to ballet, 5 times a week, and these feelings just didn't fit at all. I fell in love with someone in my class. Let's call her Sarah. That's not her real name. No, Sarah in my class, but we'll call her Sarah. And it was just so painful. But in my diary, there's all these things like, I did this today. And there's this one line that just says, I don't think Sarah feels the same way about me as I do about her.
Wow.
And it was just like, I read that and went, oh my God, where did that come from? But it was just that one line. And then I went on to and then I did my homework. But that was the only thing, that's the only thing that anyone would have ever known that anything was going on for me. And it was just something that I was completely terrified of, completely suppressed. And, went and had relationships with men and, fell in love again when I was 21 with a woman. And then that was it. I was like mind blown. Like, what is this world? This is amazing. This is what it's meant to feel like. But yeah, so that was, I sort of knew around 14, but then was deeply, deeply terrified until I came out at 21. And the experience of coming out, I was with someone at the time. And I feel things really physically. And yeah, I'm not proud of this, but there was a crossover because I didn't know how to deal with it. I didn't know how to tell the guy I was with. So terrified of the situation. But when I did, I literally felt like I'd been run over by a bus. Like physically, I felt like I felt physically bruised, battered. And I can remember it clear as day. I was supposed to be teaching. I was running performing arts classes at the university that I was teaching at. And I couldn't teach. I just couldn't. My friend was also with me, so she took over. And I just went for a walk. And I still remember that walk. So I just feel like I'd been physically run over. So yeah, it was a real guttural physical experience. But it's like the biggest plaster being ripped off. And just your whole wounded self just being exposed to the world.
Wow.
So that was kind of my coming out experience. But there was also loads of lovely things tied up in that. My family were really great, and I found love, real, connection and love with women, and that was like incredible. So yeah, there's lots of lovely things. But yeah, that experience of like just not being who I was really, and knowing how to be that person. I didn't know how to be that person. Yeah. And then, yeah, felt like I'd been run over by a bus, and then it got slowly better from there.
It's actually listening, to our conversation. Is one thing that's really coming up is that sense of really wanting to belong and really wanting that connection, but almost feeling so disconnected, so not belonging in the start of the journey, knowing that actually different, but not really understand what it is. But then that sense when you kind of almost like break through that barrier and then you find that belonging, you find that connection, you find yourself where you can show up as you. That
Yeah.
whole sense, I mean, that's quite a journey.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. But it's possible, and it happens for, a lot of members of the community. They can get to that stage of belonging and connection. I mean, we're talking from that space here today. It's been a journey for us all, but hopefully that gives hope to people that are listening. If they're in that dark space. I love that analogy, Holly. That gave me tingles, like ripping the plaster off. I mean, that's exactly how it felt for me at that time, and feeling run over when I had started to embrace my sexuality. It just floored me. But
Mm.
I'm now speaking from a space of pride. Don't get me wrong, sometimes it does feel uncomfortable and unsafe to share who I am, and sometimes I am overly vigilant about that. I'm not sure, that will ever go completely, but the pride is gets stronger every year, and the community that I create in that space builds every year, and the hope builds every year, and I get more closely connected to my authentic self. So I think it's exactly that, Rach. It's a journey, but it's always a journey in the right direction if you're leaning into who you are and you're on a journey of exploration. It's just taking that step forward, and there's loads of people there that can support you um, on that path with this.
Mm. Absolutely. Yeah, we were talking before about being able to see yourself in society.
Mm,
And I think that is much more available now, which I'm so relieved. Like, if I had been a teenager and seen the likes of, Chapel Rowan or Billie Eilish, then life could have been really different, I think.
mm,
But that wasn't the case for a lot of people, and that it might have been there, but I don't think it was frowned upon. It was different. It was freakish. If you were growing up in the 80s and 90s. Um, so even now, I'm just kind of so in awe of those artists who are out there, and more media is, TikToks and things on YouTube. You can find it if you look
yeah.
for it now, which is amazing because it wasn't always there. Or you had to go to a secret bar, or, to find
Mm,
it. It's a lot harder to find, or a special group. Whereas now it's amazing. People can access it from their home,
mm.
which is really great.
Yeah, it sort of added to that shame. It adds to that shame, doesn't it? If it's not visible and out there, that we have to hide
Mm.
when we're finding these things and secretly look at them. But now I think the visibility is improving um,
Mm.
in that respect. Representation getting better.
Mm.
Obviously, the political scene isn't getting better at the moment, but we won't
No.
delve into that. But I think it might be worth saying as well, just even on this podcast, that monthly we hold a circle, a space for members of the community, LGBT plus community, to come together and just share. And we talk about some of these topics in confidence and in a safe space. If people feel comfortable sharing, or they can just come and sit and listen and meet like-minded people. So that's part of who we're about as a collective of rainbow coaches. Supporting the community. We offer that free space. So do get in contact with us if you feel like you are questioning and you'd like to come along and meet some like-minded people. I don't know where to start.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, it's such a lovely space, isn't it? It's
Mm.
really a joy to be able to connect like that. I just want to ask, do you think you would be here today speaking as part of the Rainbow Collective? Obviously, coming out has affected that, but do you think how much do you think it's affected the trajectory of your life?
Wow, great question.
Yeah. hugely, but I don't know how to answer that just yet.
Mm.
Um,
Do you think you'd be a coach?
I think what comes up for me is it's like in big glowing letters, and it's just the word authenticity. And
Hey.
this is what I love. It's, a huge part of my work I'm on a journey with sort of coaching people, but also the work that I love doing with myself is that coming back to authentic self, that leaning into, you know, what you really want beneath all the layers, beneath all the conditioning, who you are and what you really want. And I couldn't take other people on that journey if I hadn't been on that journey myself.
Mm.
And I wouldn't be where I am in terms of understanding what I want to do with my life if I hadn't touched the surface of who I am. And I remember being in that space of there's so much more that I could do, but I have to cross that bridge of coming out. And that was a
Mm.
really terrifying, to use your word, headspace to be in. But I've crossed that bridge. I'm over the other side. And now it's like the world's my oyster in terms of the journey that I can go on to lean into my authentic self. I've ripped off that plaster and I can now really do the work on myself, but also help other people in that journey. So it's a great question. And I can say with absolute certainty I would not be where I am now if I hadn't have embarked on that journey.
yeah, I mean, I can't imagine life not being out. um, yeah, but I think my journey has been so many, turns and twists that I think for me that curiosity of you almost have to get curious with yourself
Mm,
because to come out you need to know what you're coming out as. So that
Mm.
curiosity starts before
mm,
and it continues. And I think, maybe we'll go on in future talks, but that kind of how we use language around it as well, which has changed over the generations, has a big impact too. Um, so yeah, I don't think I probably wouldn't be here if I hadn't gone through maybe coming out. And I think also the people I've met along the way, I've met some really lovely people along the way and heard some of their coming out stories, which are, amazing kind of thing. And, some have been amazing, some of them have been, I don't know what word to use, shocking, I guess, some of their
mm,
journeys. Um, but at the end of it, they're here to tell their stories. They're
mm,
still standing strong. So I think that natural curiosity, that natural to know that actually that not everyone's going to like everybody, but that we do have that common thread.
mm. Yeah.
Amazing.
How
Yeah.
about you, Holly?
Yeah. Um, I don't think I probably wouldn't. It's definitely, oh, I can't get my words out. It's definitely affected my life massively. Would I be here? No. But I was writing down a few words because I could go down a more negative, like, well, what could I have done if I had had a different life? But one of the things
Mm,
I just wrote down is being, especially doing coaching and going on this journey with you both as well, it's allowed me to really love my journey, um, because I feel like it has made me being able to, having done the work on myself. I spoke about this in the last podcast, but about being happy when you've experienced a lot of pain. You can either wallow in that or you can be determined to get out. And I think I have been determined to get out of that. And that has enabled me to do the work. And now I'm at a point where I'm a coach and I can coach other people and I can do amazing things with you guys. in the coaching space, and I can live my out happy life, yeah, it's allowed me, yeah, to love the journey. So yeah, whether I would be here, probably not. But do I love that I'm here? 100%.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So we're coming up to, yeah, half an hour now. Where are we at? How are we feeling?
Always nice, isn't it, to get together and, you know, share our stories and our thoughts on all of this. This is what, it's not the only thing that binds us, but it's a large part of what binds us, our experience. Um, I think it's been, yeah, sort of nice to revisit some of that. I mean, obviously some of this is painful for us, but it's nice to see how far we've come, and hopefully for the listeners that gives them hope as well on their journey if they are at the beginning of that, that, you know, this is the destination. You know, friends, lifelong friends, like-minded friends who you can just show up and be your authentic self with. Don't have to worry about pretenses and acting, and that starts with that coming up process. But there's lots of people that can help you along the way. Um, yeah, that's been a really nice conversation.
Yeah, I agree, Max. It's felt again very organic. Just go with it, and see what comes up. And yeah, it's kind of interesting revisiting some of that.
Mm.
And I do agree in that sense of hopefully it will help people that maybe are struggling, and to know that actually there are things out there, there are people out there.
Yeah. We can signpost people to organizations if they want support with the coming out as well,
Mm.
process. So do get in
Yeah,
contact with us.
yeah, absolutely. Lovely. How are we feeling, guys? Should we draw it to a close?
I think so. I think
Yeah.
it
Is
feels
there
right, doesn't
anything
it?
anyone else would like to say at all before we finish?
Just RuPaul's words. You know, if you can't love yourself, how the hell can you love anybody else? But it's that self-love. It's just that self-love, you know, journey. This is what this is at its core, isn't it? It's how can we love who we are at our core, and we all have the ability to do that. And it's possible for us all.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I also think there's that thing, isn't it, of that sense of belonging.
Mm.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thank you both so, so much for sharing everything today. There is a lot in there.
Mm.
And yeah, just to, yeah, we'll all look after ourselves tonight because you never know. It's a lot to share, isn't it? It covers a lot, doesn't it, coming out, I think.
Yes.
Um, and it can go back quite a long way into our lives as well. So yeah, I just want to honor that and thank you so much, both of you.
Thanks,
Thank
Ollie.
you, Holly.
Yeah, so amazing. So, listeners, if you resonate with this topic or anything that we've shared today, or if you have any ideas on things you'd like us to talk about in the future, please visit our website, and we would love to hear from you. We will link the website in the show notes. Until next time, where we'll be discussing breaking free from shame. Okay, take care, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye bye.